And we're back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, bringing you our second segment. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you again to please like and follow the show. We do get a number of questions from viewers, so to ensure that your question does get read in the air, please use the link, gsmcpodcast.net. It really does help the show, and it really does mean a lot, so thank you so much for that. And let's get back into the show for today. All right, we are going to be talking about the New York Mets and their trade deadline and the news involving them and Kodai Senga, so let's get into it. Now, everything was going just fantastic for this Mets team. Series started on Thursday against the Braves. Mets were 2 games out of the wild card versus them, and if they won the series, they would be in sole possession of the first wild card spot and second place in the NL East. Great job. First game, beat the Braves. Did a great job beating them. Tensions, momentum was very high in Queens. As a Mets fan, I was loving it. It was fantastic. Game now going to Friday, second game of that series. It was Friday. The black jerseys were on, and Kodai Senga, your ace, has finally returned from injury. After being out all year with an arm injury, has finally returned, and we're making a season debut against the Braves. You win this game, you're in sole possession of the first wild card spot. Everything was going great. The Mets bats were electric. They were up by like 7 within the 5th inning, and then the Mets struck. Kodai Senga going for a pop-up off the mound, falls, and gets a calf strain and is now out for the entire rest of the regular season. All momentum dies down, and the Mets lose the next 2 games to the Braves in the series. Split the series, which is fine, and now are back in 3rd place in the NL East and are back in last place in the wild card. Still fine, but man, the momentum was high, and Senga's injury just killed it. And the worst part was Senga looked fantastic. I was watching this game on an airplane, actually flying to Tampa Bay, as I said before. I was there for the weekend. Watching the Rays game, and he looked great. I was having a great time watching the Mets swing those bats. I was having a great time watching the Ghost Fork be back in play there, and everything was going great. Mets fans were happy. All the momentum was there, and just Senga falling as soon as that happened, it just killed the momentum. And man, just the Mets can't escape themselves, can they? It was really unfortunate, and the Mets all season had planned for Senga to come back and be a big part of their team after the trade deadline. Their rotation is good, but really has lacked that number 1 ace this year. Luis Severino, very solid. Sean Manaea, very solid. But those 2 guys are solid 3-4 guys, maybe even, okay 2 and 3 guys. You need an ace. And the way Senga pitched last year, he played like an ace, and now is who they're expecting to come back. And the fact that Senga then is out for the rest of the year, just suddenly, not even with an arm injury, just a freak injury, falling off the mound, draining your calf, is horrible and really changes the Mets trade deadline. They already made some trades. They had made some trades before and after that, which we'll go over as well. But with that, it affects the trade deadline for the Mets, and and you have to talk about, what do the Mets do now? Where do they go from here? And I think that first of all, you have to acquire a starting pitcher. I think that's a need at this point. You also, not only was Senga hurt, but Christian Scott was hurt as well. And also, not only was Scott hurt, he wasn't playing the greatest this year. Of course, one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball, came up for the Mets, started off pretty solid, but then really did not get any better and just was really inconsistent. So now your rotation looks like this. You have Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, you have Jose Quintana, David Peterson, Tyler McGill, Jose Budo. That's really the 6 guys right now on your MLB roster that can make a MLB start. You also had Joey Lucchesi in the minors. You have Blade Tidwell and Brandon Sporat in the minors, but those are prospects, and Lucchesi is not on the MLB roster. So now here's what you look at. McGill, I think, is bad. I think a lot of Mets fans are over him. Let's get him out of the picture. That's 5 then. Budo has been absolutely fantastic in the bullpen. There's really no way you can get rid of him. That's 4. That's now 4 guys who can really make a start. So the Mets pitching depth that we talked about all year as being fantastic and great, that they could potentially trade from it with how many stars they have, suddenly gets really thin. And because of that, you have to acquire a starting pitcher at the deadline. I think that's very clear. The Mets obviously are going for it. They're trying to win. We'll talk about the 2 trades they made as well, which showed they're trying to win. And so if you are trying to win, which we believe they are, they need a starting pitcher. There's a lot of guys that get on the market, but a lot are gone now. I thought Eric Fetty was an absolutely picture-perfect fit with this Mets team. He got traded to St. Louis. That'll be my 4th segment here, which we'll be talking about, so we'll be talking about that more. You can't get him. Andy Martino said the Mets aren't getting Jack Flaherty. So, you don't really have the prospects for a Skubal, for a Garrett Crochet. So the question now becomes, what do the Mets do? They have to acquire a starting pitcher, and I think they have to get one by two. Obviously, they have to get one by Tuesday. But if they want to win, I think they need to. You just cannot have Tyler McGill having regular starts out here. You just can't. And also, you don't have much depth behind him as either. He's a fine depth guy, number 6 guy. That's fine, but you just can't, put him in as a regular starter. You just can't do that right now if you're trying to win a pennant, trying to go to the World Series, which this Mets team has been on fire lately. I don't see why that's an unrealistic possibility at this point. So, there's a lot of starting pitchers available. I think they need to get one. I mean, I'm going to talk about my trade deadline predictions, like the rest of the guys who haven't been traded as well. But, obviously Jack Flaherty doesn't get traded here apparently, but Blake Snell's still out there. Apparently his value's not that high because teams don't want to take his contract on. The Mets have history of taking on bad contracts. If it's a good player, the Mets could do that. Frankie Montas, solid depth option, I think. A history in New York. Tyler Anderson, wouldn't be happy about that, but is an arm. Jameson Taillon, someone that's been connected to the Mets a lot in the past few hours. Kyle Quantrill, very solid depth piece. Zach Littell, very solid depth piece. So I think that there's a lot of ways the Mets can go, but the bottom line is they have to acquire a starting pitcher. With the Senga injury, with the way they are trying to win now, trying to go all in, which is really a different approach than before, which is trying to, maybe get 2 relievers, try to compete this year, but really go for next year. No. With the way they've done this year recently, they have to go all in. And I think that's really what it is right now. And I think they need to acquire a starting pitcher. And a lot of teams need a starting pitcher, and the prices have not been cheap. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do and really interesting to watch their deadline. But they did make 2 other trades, which I wanted to talk about. So first off, we have Jesse Winker trading for him of the Nationals. This broke very late on Saturday night. I love this trade for the Mets. I think it was a really good job. They needed a lefty bat off the bench to be able to, be a pinch hitter option late in games, fill in for the depth in the outfield, and also start. I mean, he's batting 5th today against a righty. So with the injury to Starling Marte, with how bad DJ Stewart's been, with Harrison Bader being on the injured list for a little bit now, not the injured list, sorry, dealing with an ankle injury, I think you needed some more outfield depth, specifically a left-handed power bat, which Winker brings, of course. Has a nice history in New York with the Mets fans waving them away, all that kind of stuff is history there. Obviously, he can handle the big stage. I'm sure would love to be on the big stage. So I like this trade a lot. I think it was a really, really nice trade by the Mets to be able to get some depth in the outfield and add a hitter here. I really, really like this a lot, and I thought it was a really solid trade. And again, I think they're going all in. I think they're trying to win. Ryan Stanek, they acquired him from Seattle. Really solid bullpen arm, has some really nice stuff. Didn't do great in his Mets debut on Sunday, which was yesterday, of course, but the Mets had already lost that game, so I'm not really, too worried about it. Has some really great stuff, and was someone that David Stearns targeted in the offseason as well, so obviously David Stearns must see something in him that he likes, so very interested to see what that is, and very interested to see what happens there and how he plays with the Mets, but yeah, they've made some trades there, and I think that the Mets are in a very interesting spot right now because of the Senga injury. You need to acquire some starting pitching. With the way they performed lately, you could argue they are, the 4th best team in the National League. I don't think that would be a crazy thing to argue. You could argue they are the best team out of all those wild card type teams, so those 6 or 7 teams. So I'm very interested to see what they do, and I like the Winker and Stanek trades as well. Senga injury was really rough, but you got to do something. It seems unlikely that you're going to get a top-line starter now unless you make a shocker trade for Blake Snell, but overall, going to be very interesting to watch and very interesting to see what they do. Now, I want to talk about another trade as well that related to the Mets, because it is in the NL East, but I didn't really have a way to talk about it, and that was Carlos Estevez, the Philadelphia Phillies. Again, I really want to talk about the trade because it was pretty significant, but I couldn't really find a way other than this, so I know it's kind of a diversion from the Mets, but the Mets are facing the Phillies in the NL East, so I thought it was, something interesting there. But yeah, Estevez being traded to the Phillies, I really like this move for Philadelphia. Your closing situation has been a little iffy this year with Jose Alvarado being very up and down. Getting one of the most consistent closers in baseball over the past 2 years in Carlos Estevez from the Angels was a really, really good move. Should be able to really help out that 9th inning. Him and Alvarado moved back into a more comfortable role for him, which is the 8th inning, more as a setup man, so I really like this there. Now, it was a really high price you gave up. I mean, you gave up, first of all, a very good left-handed pitching prospect to the Angels, which could slot in as a potential top 100 prospect. So overall, I think that it's a really tough really tough price to give up. I mean, you gave up George Klassen, who immediately slots in as the third best Angels pitching prospect. So, that is interesting. But overall, you did give a lot. You did give a lot up for him. I want to make that clear. I think the Angels did very well in this trade. So it allows them to get the youngster fireballer Ben Joyce into the closer role, which I'm sure he will be for the future. So we interesting to see there. But yeah, I like this trade a lot for the Phillies. You should go all in this year, I think. Makes a lot of sense. You're a great team. So overall, I very much like this trade and interested to see where the Phillies go next. But yeah, overall, I like what the Mets did, I like what the Phillies did. Overall, this is about the Mets, but I want to be able a chance to talk about Carlos Estevez as well. All the trades happening, I can't keep up. There's also potentially another one talking about, which I'll go over now. But moving into our third segment, which is going to be talking about the AL East and some trades going on there. Been a lot of movement in the AL East, this division, going over 4 significant trades that did end up happening here. So yeah, going over that, and we'll talk about it then. So we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it?